At number 10 is Klitzplik. Just put the name up on the screen please, because I can't pronounce that. This guy, believe it or not, is actually a descendant of Kal-El. This weird little dude hails from far in the future, around the 67th century to be more specific, but he is immortal, so he's also encountered as far into the future as the 853rd century. He is also known to be a fifth dimensional being, which means that he can explore dimensions beyond the understanding of any normal humans, including myself. I don't get it. And I'm not alone, most heroes wouldn't even understand it either. He has all the classic Kryptonian powers, but due to his bloodline including genes from a whole other race of superpowered beings, this future version of Superman also has 5D vision, which means that he can share his thoughts with others in real time, among other things. And he uses a weapon called the Hyperpoon, which is a hilarious name for a weapon that functions beyond the means of our comprehension. It's basically just more 5D stuff.
Number 9. Flashpoint Zatanna. This version of Zatanna Zatara comes to us from the Flashpoint universe. In this reality, Zatanna looks like a hardcore biker chick. She has an arm sleeve tattoo and sports some very low-rise leather pants, and wears a leather vest over what appears to be a leather bikini top. Her hair is shorter, her nails are painted dark, and she wears a black choker. She also drives a motorcycle. Sadly, as badass as she looks in this reality, she still ends up defeated and dead after a fight with Enchantress.
Next up at number 8 we got KELLEY. The non-canonical Batman The Dark Knight Returns introduced us to a female version of Robin named KELLEY. She was a 13-year-old who was saved from muggers by an old and semi-retired Batman, and she is inspired to spend her lunch money on a Robin costume and hunt down her hero. Frank Miller himself noted in an interview that she would be the hero he would want to see the most in a DC movie at some point, so hopefully this ends up happening.
Number 7. Flashpoint Starfire. Not everyone may love the idea of Starfire being a villain, but you can't deny that being bad looks good on Starfire. In the Flashpoint timeline, Corey joined Wonder Woman's army as one of her female Furies. This version of Starfire features a similar look to her main timeline counterpart. She is one of those weird 90s looking face and hair pieces that I love so much. I don't know why I love them, because I feel like in reality they would really look terrible on people. She is also covered in a costume that defies logic, featuring just swirls of purple flame to cover her. And she is also wearing some seriously amazing thigh-high boots. In this reality, her and Dick Grayson end up against one another, and a trap that he lays results in her death.
Coming in at number 6 we have Calorie Queen. Often my nickname when I go out for sushi with my friends. I have really nice friends. Calorie Queen debuted in Superboy number 212 as the female version of Matter Eater Lad. Her voracious appetite is the result of her Bismolian ancestry, but it wasn't enough to get her accepted into the Legion of Superheroes, so she joined the Legion of Super Rejects instead. Don't take me too seriously on this one, but you should all know by now that when something revolves around food, I gotta put it on a list.
At number 4 is Jordan Elliott. This is one of my personal favorites of these future versions of Superman because it's a rare example of a future Kal-El hanging up the mantle of Superman and actually living the existence of a mortal man, which I think is a pretty cool glimpse into the character and how he would act if his life were simple and much less influential. His motivation to do this is that he actually ends up killing Mr. MCGINNIS, which thank goodness, so I don't have to say the guy's name anymore. Who he kills after the annoying little dude lays out a number of bad things to happen in Superman's life. In a fit of shame, Superman voluntarily walks into a room containing gold kryptonite which strips him of his powers permanently. He then takes on the name of Jordan Elliott after his father Jor-El and marries Lois Lane in anonymity. And honestly, I'm happy for the dude because we don't have to deal with that little MCGINNIS guy anymore, right? And also, Superman's done enough. At number 1 is Superman Prime. This has got to be the most powerful and iconic futuristic version of Superman from the comics. And don't get this mixed up with Superboy Prime either, that's a whole other guy. Superman Prime appears in the DC 1 million series and sets out at the end of the 21st century to explore the cosmos. He then returns briefly in the 700th century, that's roughly 70,000 years later, and spends his time in his new Fortress of Solitude, which is the sun. Finally, another 10,500 years later in the 853rd century, he comes back again, this time with a totally golden makeover, and creates a new Lois Lane from scratch along with some other key players from his old life. This version of Superman is just completely overpowered and more of a god than many other iterations of the hero, giving us a glimpse into the vast expanse. And
Number 10. Legends of the Dead Earth. In Legends of the Dead Earth, the surviving human population of Earth are all basically aboard a spaceship, which drifts kinda aimlessly through space as it's lost its heading. The humans have also been on the spaceship so long, they basically forgot there's even a world outside. However, Batman rises up among them to become a hero and help them once again find their way. This Batman is not the Batman, Bruce Wayne, but instead a well-meaning citizen on the spaceship who learns the truth about how they are basically lost. He takes up the mantle of the hero from old folklore known as Batman and inspires a girl aboard the ship named Tris Plover to help him in his fight to fix the ship's navigation system. It's actually a really depressing story though, because in the end she's like, man, I'm not gonna be alive to get to this planet. What's the point of anything? Number 9. Saint Batman. Saint Batman was the name Azrael took up in one of the Dark Multiverse alternate realities. Here, Azrael had taken up the cape and cowl in Batman's stead after his back was broken by Bane, but refused to give back the mantle, and instead of Batman defeating Jean-Paul and taking the mantle back, Azrael basically won that fight, keeping it. He turned Bruce into a shadow of his former self, removing all his limbs and keeping him alive through kind of a cybernetic life support thing, which also seemed to cause Bruce extreme pain. Years later, Bruce is saved by the son of Talia al Ghul and Bane. However, it turns out in rescuing Batman and later defeating Azrael, they really just swapped out one awful tyrant for an even worse one. And friends, before we head on to the next point, if you are loving this list, we would love if you headed over to our Facebook page and gave it a like and a follow. It really does help us out over here at YouTube, so thank you!
At number 8 is Superman Secundus. In the DC 1 million timeline, Superman Secundus is explained to be Superman Prime's direct heir, having founded the Superman dynasty and successfully fighting off the Tyrant's son as well as Solaris, among others. Then in All-Star Superman, another future Superman named Superman 2 appears, who seems to just be the same version of the hero as Superman Secundus, just in a different iteration. This future stuff gets a little bit complicated, but this future Superman seems pretty powerful, and since he's known to be the son of Superman Prime, I felt I just needed to throw him on the list. At number 7, we've got Connor Kent, or FKA Superboy. This future version of Superman is pretty unique in that he's actually a clone of both Superman and Lex Luthor. He spends his youth in fear that he'll turn out more like Lex Luthor in all the worst ways, and unfortunately that's actually what happens. As Connor grows up into a more mature hero, he gains a reputation as a brutal version of Superman who uses extreme force against his enemies with little to no remorse. But later on during the Infinite Crisis storyline, we learn that this future Connor Kent is actually a clone of an early version of himself, which is a relief to him, but doesn't make much sense. Does it make sense? I don't know. Anyway, he's not Lex Luthor, at least. At number 6, we have Adam Ken plus 477 SPMN. The future is horrible at coming up with names apparently, but anyway, this future version of Superman is pretty cool because he kind of comes across as so futuristic that he's actually a much more complex being, but also a sort of simpler and stripped down being than Superman is now in a weird way, which is how it seems like the future would actually be if you went forward far enough. In Superman number 400, we see a future where Superman has died and his descendants have reproduced with humans, creating a new type of super being. But when they accidentally create a massive vortex in space, one of their leaders, Adam Ken, elects himself to plug it while the rest of them turn themselves into energy for some reason, to protect themselves. Anyway, the plan works and the vortex is mended, leaving only Adam Ken, we'll just call him Adam, leaving Adam as the only living being in the universe. So he thinks, until he meets his Eve. At number 5, we have the DCEU Superman from Batman Beyond. Only aging slightly, leaving some gray in his hair, this version of Kal-El is actually turned evil by Starro the Conqueror, who influences his actions over time to fit his evil agenda. But before this is found out, Superman leads the Justice League Unlimited for a while into the future, even inviting Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, into the League. It's good he does this too, because Batman becomes the one who frees Superman from Starro's grasp down the line. This version of Superman is a more experienced and stronger hero, and although he's tricked by a villain into doing some evil deeds, this isn't a list ranking power or wit. This version of Superman is just one of the more well-known and respected, and I figured he at least had to go in the top 5.
Number 4. Nubia. Nubia is the alternate Wonder Woman from Earth 23, the same Earth as Calvin Ellis's Superman. There are a few different versions that are super hot when it comes to Wonder Woman, who herself is just a stunner, and Nubia is definitely one of them. Not only is she as noble and good as her main continuity counterpart, working with her Earth's Justice League, but her costume is also killer. I personally especially love how strong she looks and love her sporting her metallic armored costume, complete with a silver metal chest piece / belt with built-in abs. Nothing says sexy like silver metal abs.
At number 3 is the Superman from the Dark Knight Returns storyline. One of the most iconic storylines involving both Superman and Batman takes place in a future where the government, aka Lex Luthor and Brainiac, has control over him, and they force Superman to carry out missions for them as a kind of superpowered contractor. A brainwashed superpowered contractor, that is. Seeing this from afar, Bruce Wayne decides he has to venture into the dangerous territory of mortal versus alien combat, taking on Superman 1v1. Luckily, Clark Kent comes back from his brainwashing, but only after a huge battle between the two former friends.
Number 2. Dick Grayson. Helena isn't the only one to carry on Batman and Catwoman's legacy on Earth 2. Let's not forget that before Helena was born, Batman had an adoptive son in the boy wonder known as Robin, aka Dick Grayson, often known as the original Robin across many different worlds. On Earth 2, Dick Grayson would end up taking his adoptive father's mantle before Helena did, and operate as Batman for a time. He settles down with Barbara Gordon, and the two even have a son together who they name John. Dick, however, loses the use of his legs when he becomes paralyzed by the Joker shooting him through the stomach, which damages his spine. Sound familiar? Dick would later become Oracle. In this reality, Barbara ends up as a cop who gets shot and dies while attempting to help her family flee Darkseid's invasion. Their son John grows up to become his Aunt Helena's sidekick, Robin. Super cute. I like it. Not Babs' death though. I don't like that. That's not nice. Number 1. Terry McGinnis. When it comes to Batman, there are actually a lot of people who would be suited to don the cape and cowl. Sometimes in his stead, and other times as those who would take up the mantle after he dies or he retires. In the case of Terry McGinnis, he was pretty much created to become the new Batman. Using Bruce's own DNA, Amanda Waller designed Terry as part of her project Batman Beyond. She basically overwrote the reproductive DNA of Terry's father and chose the McGinnis family to create the modern genetic Bruce Wayne duplicate, because their psychological profiles were close matches to Bruce's own parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, which means that, you know, when Terry grows up he should be like pretty much a perfect replica. Even more so if his parents had been assassinated like Amanda wanted, but didn't work out for Waller there. Probably for the best though. I don't think you should assassinate people's parents just to turn them into Batman. That seems pretty messed up, even for Amanda Waller. Number 10. Red Queen. This is an alternate version of Psylocke from Earth 811, the alternate universe belonging to Days of Future Past. In this reality, Psylocke became one of the baddies, and boy, does bad look good on her. Psylocke ended up joining the Hellfire Club and becoming their Red Queen. She has dark painted nails, a sick cape, and some really awesome thigh-high boots that look like they might be built into her costume. I am a sucker for really nice thigh-high boots. She wears a metal bikini over a seemingly sheer red bodysuit. She also appears to wear war paint or have gotten an epic red face tattoo, one or the other. Wolverine ends up defeating this version of Psylocke and handing her over to her brother, Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain, in hopes that he can help to redeem her.
At number 9 is Super Batman. Not much is known about this guy other than that he was at one point part of the Superman squad. He is known as a mixture of two different heroic traditions, having descended from both the Superman and Batman families. Of course, he wears a uniform that marries the designs of both Batman and Superman costumes, and seems to have a combination of the two heroes' strengths as well. Sometime in the future this guy is formed, and even though there's little known about him, I put him on the list because a hybrid of Superman and Batman must be pretty powerful to some crazy degree we would never understand.
Number 7. Justice League of Assassins. In the alternate future reality of Earth 14, the JLA is a little bit different. Instead of being the Justice League of America, they are known as the Justice League of Assassins, which still perfectly fits that same acronym, so yay. JLA. Like in the main reality, Batman also ends up joining this team. The world they live in seems to be a post-apocalyptic war zone when we see the JLA in issue number 15 of the 2016 Superman series. Despite their most valiant efforts, the Justice League of Assassins, including Batman, end up defeated and killed by the Prophecy. Batman actually ends up losing his head as a result of this fight. He's like the first one to go. Gets his head shot clean off. At least he still gets to finish what he was saying though. As his head pops off. Number 6. Helena Wayne. In the alternate future reality of Earth 2, it is Helena Wayne, Batman and Catwoman's daughter, who lives on to carry on the Batman legacy. Helena Wayne is often known by the name Huntress, not to be confused with Helena Bertinelli, the Huntress of the main continuity, but eventually goes on to take up her father's mantle of Batman. Yeah, not Batwoman, just Batman. Kinda love it. We haven't gotten to see too much of Helena's Batman in action, but I have always loved the idea of Catwoman and Batman settling down together and having a daughter who would one day be inspired to carry on their legacy and become a hero using either of their superhero names in their honor. Number 5. Dark Knight Returns. This is an older version of Bruce from Frank Miller's alternate future reality of Earth 31. Here Batman comes out of retirement when Harvey Dent returns. To make matters worse, the Joker also escapes custody. Not only does Batman have Dent, the Joker, and the criminal scum of Gotham to contend with, but Superman is also after him as well. In this reality, Superman had become a government hero, becoming the loyal ally to the President of the United States. Kind of like his guard dog, really. And the President of the United States does not take too kindly to Batman's return. In the end, the two must face off in a famous fight that would go on to inspire multiple narratives, including the Batman v Superman film from the DCEU. Number 4. Damian Wayne. One of the darkest Batmen to arise would be Damian Wayne's Batman. Damian takes up the cape and cowl in a possible future story featured in Batman issue 666. Get it? 666. Known as Batman in Bethlehem. Batman in Bethlehem is a story where in the future, Damian Wayne sells his soul to Satan in order to ensure Gotham's protection. This drastic measure happens in a world where people really are looking for some kind of security as climate change, war, and acts of terror threaten the entire planet, turning it into a hellish futuristic landscape. This future version of Damian, who becomes Batman, also seems to be impervious to gunfire and no longer restrains himself from killing those who oppose him. Kinda like my dad was here so that I could be this Batman later. I feel like Daddy Batman would not be too happy with you, Damian. He would be like, don't kill people, but you're gonna do what you're gonna do. I guess it's a different world. Number 3. Thomas Wayne. Although it might seem weird to put Thomas Wayne on this list as he's Batman's father and so in a way is part of his past, in the alternate future known as Flashpoint, Thomas actually becomes Batman instead of Bruce. This is after Bruce is killed, causing Thomas to make a plan to get vengeance and inspiring him to become a vigilante fighting for justice on the streets of Gotham. Martha, however, kinda goes the opposite way with it. The death of Bruce causes her to basically go insane. Unable to move on or let go, she ends up haunted by his memory and becomes the villain known as the Joker, becoming Thomas's sworn nemesis, despite the love that they once shared. What a tragic story.
At number 2 is the Superman from the Kingdom Come storyline. This iconic future version of Superman has to come out of retirement to protect the human race against a new, misguided group of younger super beings. A more grizzled, aged, and wise Superman, the Kingdom Come storyline brings a ton of humanity to the character as he faces the challenge of humbling himself and his allies in their older age. After a murderous superhero named Magog is acquitted of killing the Joker, Superman goes into hiding for 10 years, leaving Kansas to be overrun by a community of misguided superpowered beings. Having also lost Lois Lane, Superman becomes jaded, but ultimately comes out of hiding to reform the Justice League. On top of reforming a younger generation of misguided heroes though, and well, a brainwashed Captain Marvel, which adds a huge rut in the whole works, they have to also prevent the humans from dropping 3 massive nuclear bombs on Kansas, which are also superpowered to affect superpowered beings more than they originally would. This version of Superman shows a side to the hero that we are not used to, giving him a wiser, more jaded disposition. It really proves that doing the right thing is just in Kal-El's blood, no matter how much the world has betrayed him.
Number 1. Power Girl. So, I'm not about to talk about Earth 2 Power Girl here because that seems a little weird and wrong. Although many people think of Power Girl as an alternate version of Supergirl, she really is her own character. Now, of course, the continuity in DC can be very confusing because of all of the resets we've seen and had. But basically, just know that Earth 2, where Power Girl is from, is kind of like the home for the classic versions of superheroes, as established in 1961's Flash Volume 1, Issue 123, like Jay Garrick's Flash, Alan Scott's Green Lantern, old school Batman and Superman. So to call Power Girl an alternate doesn't really do her justice. Which is why I'm going to talk here about one of her own hottest alternates from the series, Justice League The Nail. Power Girl is one of the hottest characters in the comic book world, so of course I could not leave her out of this list. This alternate version has a similar look to Power Girl when it comes to her costume and aesthetic, but with just a few little alterations making her costume a touch more racy. Now, I have always loved Power Girl's look because I feel like she is just so unashamed of her body, of what others think of the way that she dresses. That confidence that she exudes makes her one of the most sexy and attractive supers out there. Nothing looks sexier on a person than confidence.